probably seen in the news, we're the second on the ranking. That's not a good position to be. We're the second one, just behind the US. And the increase in numbers has increased like the last couple of weeks, actually the last months. And we're still trying to cope with that, you know. So we're still seeing a rise in numbers of contagions and deaths. And a lot of the economy is kind of stagnated. A lot of, like in the US, also a lot of, should we reopen? Are we reopen too soon? Following the distancing, it's like pretty much the same dilemmas that we're experiencing here. But in general, I think we're doing okay. But right now, it's not like the best scenario. And we're still like, I believe we're still a couple of months away of actually, you know, getting through the worst of that. So we're not doing that good, but hopefully there's like next month or so, the numbers kind of go down and we'll start like slowing, going back into the normal or the normal as we want. So it's been challenging, you know. A lot of companies had to change the way of doing business, not only retail-wise, but in general. So everybody's trying to rethink, and the industry has suffered a little bit. And we've seen some industries doing better than others, but at this moment, it's been very challenging.
So after a very strict lockdown of the country during the spring months, France has been able to flatten the curve and then to reopen its economy with obviously social distancing rules in place. So at this point, it's been a few weeks that the reopening plan has been rolling out, and we haven't seen any new spike. Obviously, the situation is monitored closely, but at this point, we've been able to flatten the curve.
Look, COVID's obviously sent shockwaves around the world. We're feeling it in New Zealand too. New Zealand's approach has been that the best way to help New Zealand's economy is to have a really strong health response. So New Zealand went, we call it hard and early. We had a really hard, tight lockdown, followed by a really tight border control. So the end result being, it's been a little bit in the media, but we don't currently have any community transfer, which means that life is not that far different than what it was pre-COVID for all of us here. The result of that is that New Zealand's economy has opportunities and opened up a bit faster than some other markets. But as a small nation that relies on trading, we've also had to really work hard on keeping our supply chains open to key markets like the US. We need to make sure that the ports are open, that we've got air channels into markets like the US. So as a result, our food and beverage exports in particular have seen some pretty positive results. New Zealand is a trading nation. Our economy is built on trade. Our tourism industry in particular, like many other nations, has been impacted quite heavily. So as a result, we've put a lot of energy and effort into increasing the support and building out other industries and our exports. We've continued to be able to do business through the pandemic, which means we've been able to weather the storm a little bit better than other markets might have been able to. But overall, of course, our economy, like most other countries around the world, is taking a big hit with the pandemic.
Well, so obviously during the lockdown, the economy took a hit as everywhere in the world. But at this point, the economy is restarting. People are back to work. People are back in the stores. So the economy is again starting again, and France is working on a restart and recovery plan that will be laid out throughout the summer. And part of this plan will obviously be dedicating to export companies, so to support French exporting companies.
Not doing good, obviously. I think like most of the world, they are the official, not the official numbers, but they're like saying about a reduction on the GDP for 2020. And government is saying minus 4.7%, but the market and some specialists are mentioning maybe up to minus 6.1% reduction. So that's a pretty big number compared to the GDP.
Right.
And but it's still like doing okay. You know, I think there's the unemployment rate hasn't gone that high. I think we didn't experience that as bad as in the US, incredibly. But there's a lot of sectors that are, of course, they are suffering more. But some industries are doing better than others. Some there's no actually a reason for that. For example, furniture is doing very well. You know, I think people are just trying to look at their houses, how we can improve that. That's the moment to do it. So the furniture sector is doing good, but the footwear sector, it's doing really bad. You know, it's a lot of companies, they're not actually closing, but they're stop production and they're just dealing with the stock they have. And of course, they cannot produce it because of all the rules of distancing and everything else that's going on. So we hopefully that's going to be better in the next couple of weeks or months, so we can start getting better. But the economy in general is not doing that good. It's not as bad as as has been feared, but everybody's having to adapt, you know, a little bit. It's trying to reduce costs whenever possible, so you know, we don't have to let people go, like in general. So it's I think we're gonna have a better idea in the next month or so.
Right.
Right now it's stabilized, but not doing great.
So there is aeronautic and aerospace industry. You also have everything that's around fragrance and cosmetic. Agribusiness is a very important also industry for France, and the pharmaceutical industry. You also have other areas of importance like fashion, new technology, the auto industry, and energy.
We work with every industry segment in Brazil. It just needs to be like manufacturers, semi-manufactured products or services, so we support that. But the core areas that we work, it's agribusiness, we work with technology, health and beauty, services, furniture, industry in general, you know, machinery and all that. And so we pretty much support all the areas. But agribusiness and technology and health and beauty are probably the main areas that we were working on.
Know anything about New Zealand? You might know our rugby. If you're a sports fan, the All Blacks is our national rugby team. If you're into movies, you likely know Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit. You might be a wine connoisseur, in which case you probably have tasted our incredible Sauvignon Blancs or our Pinot Noirs, which also have a huge footprint here in the US. Or you might know us for our stunning landscapes and our tourism. What you may hear less about is some of the amazing things that New Zealand does in industries behind these key areas. We've got an incredible creative sector where we've created world-leading capability and technologies for the film industry. We've created interesting and creative technologies in the sports space. And also behind New Zealand's beautiful landscapes, we're able to take advantage of our isolation. We've got our land, our agri-tech, our farming, and our food production. So as a country at the bottom of the world, we've had to learn how to be really, really good at delivering high quality premium food in a way that cares about the environment, cares about food safety and food security. We're only a country of 5 million people, but we produce enough food to feed 40 million people. That's 8 times our population. So within that, we focus on premium products, our premium seafood, meats, dairy. So in those kind of spaces, we really care about for how the food is farmed and fished. We take pride in preserving our land and our seas for future generations, but also in the added value natural food space, we're starting to see more and more products leading with innovation.
I think almost in every country, it's changed, but the online business, you know, it's blowing up. Everybody's trying to do online business, online sales, and online buying. But what happened, it had to be fast forward that because it wasn't. Brazilians were already using a lot of online, but not in the same level as the US or other countries. So it had to be like a very quick to adapt to that, and so we're seeing a lot of tendency on that, and then we're seeing a lot of do it yourself as well, you know, because we cannot the way services were provided or the way sales or business were done. People have to start doing stuff themselves in their homes and everything else. So I think that was the most unique thing we've been seeing there. Besides, it's pretty much like the US, you know, what we've been seeing here. And the same, some of the same rules apply to that as well, to Brazil. So I think online, companies that are not even ready to go online, they have to, you know, to go and move really fast to be able to provide online services.
So our consumers care about very similar things that many Americans care about at the moment. We are conscious consumers of the products and services we buy. We care that the land is being considered, that resources are being considered, that the ingredients and materials used are ethical and sustainably sourced. And when New Zealanders look for purchasing decisions, we often consider, is this good for the world? So the flip side of that is when our companies are producing products for selling in the US, they're also thinking, have we done this well? Is this good for the environment and good for people? So an example of this, I think, is probably in a really traditional space for New Zealand, the wool industry. We've got far more sheep than we do have people in New Zealand, so we've got a lot of wool. But wool is also a very clever natural fibre. It's renewable, sustainable, natural, breathable. It keeps you hot when it's cold and cold when it's hot, and it's also water propellant. So it's a far, far better fibre to use or product to use than plastic. So what we've been seeing more recently is wool used, some really interesting innovation coming out of this really traditional industry. We're seeing wool in shoes, wool used in running tops, wool used in surfboards. So I think overall the trends that you see coming out of New Zealand is using natural products and materials that New Zealand is really, really great at producing. And we've kind of twisted them in interesting and innovative ways that make it good for you and good for the world and good for the environment.
So I don't know if the trends I'm going to talk about are really unique to French consumer, but the main trends that we are seeing in France right now, and it has been a trend before COVID-19, and it's just being reinforced since COVID-19, is that consumer, they want to know what they're consuming. So where it comes from, how it is made, what is the carbon footprint of what they're producing, and what would be the impact on the environment from their consumption. So this will translate, for example, in clean label for food and beverages product or ethical, environmental friendly items in the fashion industry.
So as a small nation, our companies are born global by necessity. We say we can't get rich from selling to ourselves. So when we're building products and brands, we have to build them with a global audience in mind, particularly for markets like the US. So we really need insights from US consumers as we build and develop our products. And we know US retailers are closest to the consumer, closest to the trends that are going on. So we really want to hear that from you so we can make sure our companies are producing the right things. So what I'd love to know from you is what matters for you most right now? What are the 3 or 4 things that if we got those right, you would welcome more products from New Zealand? That's what I'd love to know.
That's a good question. I would like to understand a little bit more, how are they dealing with the pandemic? You know, how are they still keeping their business moving? Because they also, like suppliers, they also use a lot of trade shows, a lot of travel, or suppliers coming to them to show products or doing meetings. I know there were some meetings already that were conducted online, but are they doing anything specific besides phone calls or video conferencing? Are they using other platforms? So that would be very helpful even for us to pass on to our companies and see how we can maybe facilitate some of that. You know, we're already using ECRM with the virtual meetings that you guys are offering, but we want to understand a little bit more how they're conducting business. Are they looking for marketplaces? Are they looking for, you know, how even like, for example, products that they need to be like sampled or tested, how are they doing that? You know, are they getting shipments and testing that, or how are they doing that? And that's the main questions I have. And how are they planning to do it also for, you know, to the end of the year and also beginning of 2021? Because at this moment we have we have no idea when we'll be able to start traveling again or having, like, you know, meetings in person. So that's very challenging, you know, to plan for the future. And we'd like to be more aware of how are they doing business, so we can also be, you know, on the same page and maybe able to not only help the suppliers but actually the buyers, so we can put them in touch with them.
Some of the questions that we receive the most from suppliers, from vendors right now, is it the right time to offer a new product to buyers in the US? And also they want to understand better how the local trend is affecting the sourcing decisions of the buyers. There's also a need for better understanding of the buyer portfolio strategy and articulation between brick and mortar and online channels for sales. So they want to know, is my product going to be like omni-channel, or is it going to be dedicated to one channel or the other? And obviously, because of the travel restrictions, they're wondering if US buyers are okay to make sourcing decision without having a physical face-to-face meeting especially for new vendors. So the US are a very important market for French producers. The US are the second export market for France after Germany. We export goods and services to the US, and if we take a look at the CPG category, wine and spirits will be an area of importance, as well as cosmetic. They would be the leading and most dynamic areas.
The US is still the second destination for Brazilian exports, only behind China. So we're experiencing at the moment a reduction on numbers, but that was expected. But still, the US is still number two, and that has a lot to do with you know, agribusiness and commodities, stuff that we are not that involved, because, you know, it's market prices and all that. We don't need export promotion or anything like that. But still, the US is like a big part of Brazilian exports, not only in general, but also in the mind of a lot of Brazilian exporters. Doesn't matter the industry. For some, it makes more sense to be in the US. For others, or for other industries, not really. But the US is like one of the preferred destinations, and I believe it's going to continue like that.
Well, we're an export nation, and the US is an extraordinarily important trading partner for New Zealand. We've got a really strong and historical relationship at all levels, from political level right down to doing business. You're our third largest trading partner, and I think it's about New Zealand $20 billion, just under that. And US is particularly important for us in the food and beverage space. We think about your consumer when we think about focusing on what we do really well: food safety and food security. I think New Zealand's #1 out of 113 nations for food safety. You're also one of our top markets for wine, key market for our premium salmons, lambs, beef, dairy produce, and more recently, premium natural products, personal care products, and increasingly products in the wellness space as well. So I think overall, products and brands that you see from New Zealand will be premium, natural, made from clean ingredients and materials, and built on sustainable values.
In France, if we were talking about the CPG categories, revolves around organic product, authenticity, using healthy, ethical ingredients, and also trying to reduce the carbon footprint of the product. Practicity is another area of focus for French brands.
Okay, so when we think about innovation in New Zealand, we usually see it on two levels. The first level is how we produce things, the technology and science that goes behind producing sustainable products. The second is the innovation of the products themselves. So not directly related to CPG, but just talking about the seafood industry, for example, we've developed this incredible world-leading technology. And I'm not a technical expert, but it looks a little bit like a steel tube with holes in it, so that when the fish are scooped out of the water, just the right size fish are left and the others can safely swim away. So that's kind of the way we think about building technological innovation in our supply chain and the way we farm and produce things. It's very strong across all areas of the New Zealand economy. So when we look at innovation in the consumer product space, we're seeing growing innovation in natural products and wellness functional foods. You'll see a lot of this from our native and marine plants. They've been developed from a human health perspective. You may have seen functional products produced from kiwi fruit, for example, or manuka honey. Now, if we take the example of manuka honey, that's known for its healing properties and from a health perspective. You can ingest it as an incredible food you eat, or you can put it in your food. In the case of my family, we drink it as a tea. But we're also seeing products like manuka having a lot of innovation wound into it. So now some products have evolved into wound care because of the natural healing products. So it's how we're using these natural products and ingredients really innovatively that consumers are finding interesting. We're also recently seeing a lot of innovation in the personal care space with natural shampoo and beauty bars, natural toothpastes, natural feminine hygiene products, clean beauty and skincare. These seem to really resonate with the US consumer. And of course, New Zealand's always been really innovative in wine. We produce interesting varietals, and New Zealand led the way to recreate the screw top bottles, and we're the first to use screw top bottles for premium wines. You see this also reflected in the way we farm. 98% of New Zealand's vineyards producing areas are sustainably produced. So instead of using pesticides, for example, we have these little sheep called baby doll sheep, who are so small that they can't reach up to the grapes, but they eat the weeds, so we don't need to use pesticides in our wines.